Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an absolutely incredible piece of maritime history. But fair warning right up front, the story we're about to unpack together, it is not your typical breezy teenage adventure. Not even close. We are looking at a raw, unflinching narrative that goes way beyond just a simple sailing trip. This is a profound exploration of deep isolation, harrowing physical survival, and the incredibly heavy, sometimes literally crushing psychological toll of a solo circumnavigation and sudden fame.
Picture the scene for a second. It's July of 1965. Most 16-year-olds are sweating over exams, dealing with typical high school drama, and living a highly structured, regimented life. But not Robin Lee Graham. Despising that classroom regimentation and craving the chance to explore the world entirely on his own terms, this 16-year-old sailed right out of San Pedro, California. Outfitted with the help of his dad, whose own sailing dreams were cut short by World War II, Robin set out aboard the Dove, which was a pretty modest 24-foot Lapworth sloop.
30,600. I really want that number to sink in for a second. That is the sheer magnitude, in miles, of the solo journey this teenager was embarking on. And when I say solo, I mean his only crewmates for this massive, globe-spanning undertaking were a rotating cast of cats. He sailed over to Hawaii, officially declared that as his starting point, and just aimed his tiny boat west into the vast, open expanse of the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, let's dive into this 5-year progression, because we're essentially charting the lost teenage years of his life here. He departs in 1965 at age 16. A year later, there's a crucial meeting in Fiji. By 1968, he's getting married in South Africa. And finally, his return in 1970 at age 21. We are watching a boy leave home and a fully grown, deeply changed man return. But the space between these dates, that is where the true harrowing story lies.
So, any romantic ideas Robin might have harbored about the ultimate carefree freedom of the sea? Yeah, those were crushed pretty much instantly. The ocean, as it turns out, doesn't care how old you are or what your big dreams might be. It introduced Robin to the absolutely brutal realities of seamanship right out of the gate. I mean, the sheer volume of near-death experiences this kid endured is just staggering. En route to American Samoa, a violent squall literally ripped the mast completely off his boat in a Pacific knockdown, forcing him to limp his way into Apia, Western Samoa. Later on, just 18 hours outside of Darwin, Australia, a fierce Indian Ocean storm dismasted him again. He had to sail under a jury rig, basically a makeshift survival sail, for an agonizing 18 days, covering 2,300 miles just to reach Mauritius. Add in terrifying waterspouts and near collisions in the dead of night with massive freighters, and you've got a journey completely defined by raw survival.
But here's the thing. The physical danger was really only half the battle. Beyond the broken masts and the violent storms, Graham had to fight off crushing isolation and extreme sleep deprivation. Think about it for a second. There's literally no one else to take the wheel. To keep the boat on course, he sometimes had to stay awake for days on end. That sheer fatigue, combined with the vast, endless silence of the open ocean, pushed him to the absolute brink, nearly causing him to lose his mind completely.
And this brilliantly illustrates that psychological toll. His logbook literally screams, "No wind for 9 days." Trapped in the doldrums, those maddening stretches of ocean where the air just totally dies, he was confined to a tiny 24-foot space, rocking aimlessly in the boiling heat, completely alone for over a week with zero progress. It's an incredibly severe mental test for anyone, let alone a teenager. Thankfully, the emotional trajectory of this whole adventure shifts dramatically in 1966. After battling his way through the Pacific, Robin dropped anchor in the Fiji Islands and experienced a massive turning point. Honestly, this moment likely saved his mind and probably his entire voyage.
That is where he met Patty Rattery. Like Robin, Patty was a young American trying to escape the ordinary. She'd actually dropped out of college to hitchhike her way through Mexico and the Pacific. And man, they formed an absolute instant bond. For a teenager who had been completely starved of human connection and literally battered by the ocean, Patty became the vital lifeline he so desperately needed to survive the rest of this journey.
The really crucial part here is that Patty didn't just become a fleeting memory in some port town. She became his rock. She actively followed his route across the globe by steamer and by plane. They would reunite in various ports of call, giving Robin the much-needed motivation to keep pushing forward. This incredible, unconventional global courtship ultimately culminated in them getting married in South Africa in 1968, right at the exact halfway point of his massive circumnavigation.
Now, what's really fascinating about the journey's maturation is how the whole operation leveled up.
As Robin chronicled his travels, National Geographic actually stepped in to finance him. This allowed for a massive upgrade. Once he reached Barbados, he finally sold the heavily battered original 24-foot boat and bought a much larger 33-foot sloop. He appropriately named it the Return of Dove and used it to finish out the voyage.
Fast forward to April 1970. The upgraded sloop finally sails into Long Beach, California. The physical journey, it's over, but the narrative tension doesn't end there. In fact, it leads us to the most surprising and sobering anticlimax of his incredible feat.
1,739 agonizing days. That's how long he had been gone. At just 21 years old, Robin Lee Graham was officially the youngest person to ever sail around the world alone. It's a monumentally triumphant physical achievement, right? I mean, he literally conquered the globe.
So, you'd probably expect a massive, joyful hero's welcome here. But actually, that wasn't Robin's reality at all. Instead of joy, he was hit with a crushing wave of deep depression. He was completely overwhelmed by this massive media barrage, the heavy weight of corporate sponsorships, and the sudden, glaring spotlight of international fame. The pure, unregimented freedom he sought when he was 16 had completely vanished, instantly replaced by cameras and massive expectations. It all led to a truly heartbreaking moment. Sitting right there on the dock in Los Angeles, next to his new wife and their infant daughter, the pressure of this new reality became so utterly immense and suffocating that the 21-year-old actually contemplated taking his own life. The ocean hadn't broken him, but the weight of the world's attention very nearly did.
But Robin made a completely different choice. Instead of leaning into it, he and Patty utterly rejected the spotlight. They took the money they got from selling the boat, bought an old retired postal van, completely turned their backs on the media circus and all the fame, and simply drove away.
They drove deep into the mountains of Montana. Out there, miles and miles away from the ocean and the cameras, they built a log cabin totally from scratch. They chose to live quietly right off the land. And remarkably, they're still married and living out there today. It completes such a fascinating psychological arc. You see, the true, unregimented freedom that Robin originally sought when he left California wasn't actually found in conquering the terrifying expanses of the sea. It was ultimately found in the quiet solitude of a Montana log cabin. So, what does this all mean? Well, as we wrap up the explainer today, it leaves us with a really profound thought to ponder. Looking back at the heavy psychological realities of Robin Lee Graham's incredible 5-year journey, we have to ask ourselves, is true freedom really found in conquering the world, or is it actually found in having the courage to leave its expectations entirely behind? Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope this gave you a clear, focused understanding of this truly remarkable piece of history. Catch you next time.